From there, they embarked on the supply of Fort Austin as part of an advance force to South Georgia. With them were members of Britain's most secretive Special Forces unit, the Special Boat Squadron. The SBS was primarily responsible for beach reconnaissance to an amphibious landing. Meanwhile, Royal Navy nuclear attack submarines were already patrolling the South Atlantic. And on the 7th of April, Britain declared a 200-mile total exclusion zone around the Falkland Islands. Any aircraft or ship that entered the zone was liable to be destroyed. 2 weeks later, the advance force reached South Georgia. Mountain Troop of D Squadron SAS was embarked on helicopters for an assault. Under the command of Captain Gavin Hamilton, they were landed on the inhospitable Fortuna Glacier, some distance from the Argentine garrisons at Grytviken and Leith. Unexpectedly, the weather conditions worsened, with blizzards making progress impossible. Hamilton requested evacuation, but 2 helicopters crashed on the glacier in the whiteout conditions. Eventually, the men of Mountain Troop were extracted during a fierce blizzard by a Wessex helicopter nicknamed Humphrey, skillfully flown by Lieutenant Commander Ian Stanley. 19 men were crammed into a helicopter designed to carry just 5. For his brilliant flying, Stanley was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. Undeterred, the commander of the SAS detachment, Major Cedric Delves, decided to put his boat troop ashore in their 5 Gemini inflatable craft. But the Gemini's outboard engines could not cope with the rough seas. 2 Gemini were swept away by high winds. 1 crew managed to make its way ashore and go into hiding. The other was saved by Humphrey and Ian Stanley. Meanwhile, No. 2 Section Special Boat Squadron was also inserted onto South Georgia by helicopter, where it kept the enemy under surveillance. Soon, the Argentine submarine Santa Fe was detected in the area. The Royal Navy flotilla dispersed until the threat was neutralized. Helicopters armed with depth charges and missiles took to the air and caught the Santa Fe on the surface. The submarine limped into harbour and sank. With the threat eliminated, the Royal Navy ships returned. Ships returned. Major Guy Sheridan, commander of M Company Royal Marines, and his SAS counterpart Major Delves decided to mount another helicopter assault, supported by the naval gunfire of the frigates HMS Antrim, Brilliant and Plymouth. Once ashore, the Royal Marines and the SAS quickly advanced on Grytviken and accepted the Argentine surrender on the 25th of April. It was a small but significant victory.
Having professional cameras to cover the surrender ceremony. The only pictures of this historic event were taken by a sailor with an 8mm camera. Propaganda apart, though, the recapture of South Georgia was a great morale booster.
And in Grytviken itself, sporadic bullet holes and shattered windows, relics of the small arms fire as the British moved back in. The Marines were now fully in control of a harbour recaptured without any of the large-scale destruction which many had thought possible. Some got ready to take in more supplies at one of the jetties, while others checked their equipment. Hard men, still relaxed enough to ham it up for the camera. And then a goodbye wave from the team that retook South Georgia, as Cindy and Annie set out to join a convoy for the long voyage to Ascension Island. They were refueled on the way from an accompanying tanker, which also carried some of the Argentine prisoners of war. Armed soldiers kept watch over them as they exercised on the helicopter flight deck, proving that Britain had taken time out to think of their physical fitness. Or perhaps everyone exercises like this if someone's pointing a gun at them. At any rate, for Cindy and Annie, an adventure even more remarkable than planned was nearly over.
The island. Martin Lewis has been looking at the pictures they brought back with them.
The tiny hut in St. Andrews Bay that was home for 7.5 months to Cindy Buxton and Annie Price. One of only 3 places on South Georgia where the Union Jack flew defiantly throughout the Argentine occupation of the island. A flag presented to the filmmakers for luck by the landlord of their local pub, the Bluebell, at Langham in Norfolk. The 2 women, joined by 3 scientists who trekked 15 miles from the British Antarctic Survey Base at Grytviken, spent many anxious moments wondering if they'd be spotted by Argentine aircraft or troops. But they stayed well away. The only surprise caller was a Royal Marine who knocked on the door one morning and said he'd been sent to protect them as the British were about to attempt to recapture South Georgia. He spent 3 days with them and, just in case, taught them how to use his 9mm Browning automatic. In all then, 3 weeks of watching, wandering and listening to the radio before the Black Wasp helicopter from the ice patrol ship Endurance flew in low from the sea to confirm it was all over. The Argentines had surrendered. Anxiety gave over to relief, and the helicopter pilot, Lieutenant Commander Tony Ellerbeck, might have been forgiven for thinking he'd done it all single-handed. They found the Union Jack and White Ensign flying over Grytviken Harbour once again, with the destroyer HMS Antrim riding easy at anchor. Twin symbols of the re-establishment of British sovereignty over the island.
The commander of the operation has sent the following message. Be pleased to inform Her Majesty that the White Ensign flies alongside the Union Jack in South Georgia. God save the Queen.
What happens next, Mr. Knott?
Thank you very much.
What's your reaction,
rejoice at that news and congratulate our forces and the Marines.
Are we going
Good
to
night,
declare war on
gentlemen.
Argentina, Mr. Thatcher?
Rejoice.
Morale in Buenos Aires slumped even lower when, towards the end of April, it became plain that America was now coming out firmly on Britain's side. President Reagan explained why he was putting pressure on the junta. Winning. These pictures of Argentine prisoners from South Georgia were taken by the Ministry of Defense. The men were on their way home, but still being processed by the British authorities. Compared with the way Argentina had exploited the capture of British Marines on the Falklands, these scenes were poorly shot and sent back too late to have any real effect. The ministry had been warned that Argentina would give the returning prisoners the full television treatment, welcome them home as returning heroes. And that's precisely what happened.
Argentina! Argentina! Argentina!
There was considerable concern in Whitehall that whatever setback Argentina seemed to have, the authorities were able to turn it to some kind of propaganda advantage.